Hi everyone. Right, as I said in the last video, what I was going to do is I'm going to explain to you a little bit about, if you remember this, levers, how we can use them, and different types of weight to increase intensity or bring the intensity down. A little bit about general exercise in terms of using exercise for muscle endurance, strength and power, which are all different things, and they combine together on different exercises. Really most important thing when you're doing any of this stuff is to make sure it's safe, safe being that you're going to get the maximum amount of doing the exercise. If you do exercises correctly, you will get much more out of it, all right? And that's the reason people either sometimes go to class or they might have a trainer to help them get that specific exercise done properly, and they can concentrate on one thing, and that is doing the exercise correctly. So this stuff is all for your martial arts. It doesn't matter if you're doing karate or kickboxing or any other martial art. The fitness we're doing, all of those things, you can just tweak it by using your discipline of your martial arts training, which is like when we're doing kata or if we're doing drills, keeping focused on that actual exercise. So I'm just going to talk through a few things. When you're doing training, if you want to make it harder, so if you want to make the exercise harder, the way of doing it is you can change the load. So you can get the dumbbells, so if you had a set of dumbbells on here, obviously there's this side, then you could go up, so if it's a 5 kilo, 6 kilo, 7, 8 kilo, and so forth. So you can change the weight. Next thing, which is really important, is you can change the lever length. So if I do something that's further away from my body, then it's going to make it harder. If I use weight, so I use a lever, say my arm or leg, that is going to make it harder. All right, so when we're doing an exercise, for instance, here, if I bring my elbows back, it will be closer to my body to curl, and that will be easier. If I'm using the same weight, if I want to make that harder and not change the weight, then here, so my pivot point is the elbow and shoulder. If I bring it forwards, that will be harder because it's further away from the body. So it'll be easier here, a little bit easier here, sorry, a little bit harder here, and then further out, that will be harder, okay? So I'm changing where I put that weight away from my body. If for here, I'm doing a shoulder press, let's say I'm just doing a straight shoulder press from here in this position, if I do it short, that will be easier if I'm using the same dumbbell weight. Obviously, if I change the weight, that will be different. If I go a little bit further, that will be a little bit harder. But the further I push, so if I go to a full extension here, that will be harder because I'm pushing the weight further away from my body. So if you're keeping the same dumbbell, you haven't got different dumbbells, and the way to change the exercise to make it harder is to push the weight further away from you, okay? So that way it could be in front, it could be above, it could even be behind as well, okay? So for instance, if you were here, you could do tricep kickbacks, you could go a little bit higher and a little bit further, you could lean a little bit further forwards, and the further that you went behind you, as long as your position was good, then the harder the exercise would be. So, in terms of doing your exercises, if we are using here, again, so if we use this pole, piece of wood, broom, staff, whatever it is, then when we do this, depending on where we place it, it will make the squat harder, okay? We can sometimes, if we're doing a squat, we can hold it in front of us here. So we can do like a frontal squat, so it's this position here. Sometimes we'll place it behind here, squat. Sometimes you can put the bar in front of you. That would be very hard. It's not too hard because that pole is not heavy, right? You wouldn't normally use this and hold that out unless there's a real specific reason for doing it. But you could combine the two and include a frontal raise on that. All right, so using a bar can make the exercise more difficult or more hard. You can also put different strains on your body. So from here, if we were doing like a deadlift position and coming up, here we're lifting this way up, we tend to be able to lift a lot heavier weight because we're lifting from the floor and the bar is close to us. So when we squat, the bar is close. Again, the further away, the harder it's going to be. Right? And it's something you should always think about when you're doing your exercises. If we're talking about the floor, so if we're doing some floor exercises, we talk about a normal stomach crunch from this position here. So if I'm crunching normally, I start here, This should be really one of the easiest ways of doing it. If I put my arms further out, so I'm extending away from my body, this will be a little bit more difficult. If I put my arms out further, that will be harder. The same applies here. So if I start here, in line, this will be harder than this. Then if I want to make it harder, I just put my arms behind me, and because of this lever length away from where the pivot point is, and the pivot point is here, then that will make it harder still. So depending on where I put that, that will make that exercise easier or harder, and that's something you think about. If you could always in class do the exercises here, just make it a little bit harder, but you mustn't use them. They need to add or work as an extra weight, an extra load. And we are trying to work more predominantly your rectus abdominis, which is your front stomach muscles here, but other muscles will work in these positions. Your neck muscles will have to work a lot as well, even your shoulders to hold your arms up. It just depends on how strong you are. So changing the lever length, changing the load is really important to changing your exercise and how hard. So when we're in a class, you can always make it harder or you can always make it easier, depending on how you're feeling on that day and that night, and that's what you should change. Even without the instructor telling you, you can make it harder or easier. It's like a bit like jogging. If you're in the middle of a class and you're doing fitness, and you're asked to jog, you can jog that, but if you're feeling fit, you want to push a little bit harder, then you can stride it out more like a run, and then a run into a sprint, depending on what you want to do, all right? But you just got to have control of yourself and know what you want to work on that night. Right, and that's how you're going to get fitter in a class situation, and also when you're training on your own. So some of those things, those examples of exercises, try and remember that. You can re-watch this video, and that will help educate you to train much better when you're in classes with me or a different instructor, or even if you're training at home. And that applies to every type of training. Doesn't matter how complicated it gets. Sometimes when we're doing with athletes, we might add footwork drills in there with the loading. We might do more power work where we're throwing medicine balls or balls away from us, or we do a more plyometrical type bounding work. But only do what you can do. The key with all of this is train at your level. Don't train like an elite athlete if you're not there yet. All right? And that's sometimes doing too much too early, and that's the mistake people make. It's like if you're starting out and you're using this time and you can go out exercising, that if you go out and run, always start with a walk. And if you're going to start running, start with a very small jog. And I literally mean 5 seconds of a jog, and then walk for a minute, 2 minutes, and then 5 seconds, and then just take it back down and build it up. What you don't do is go out for a jog, you haven't maybe jogged or ran for a year, and then you try and go out and do 10 minutes of jogging, all right, and all jogging, it's too much. Start with a walk, increase the pace, go into a jog, then bring it back down to a walk, and that's the way to do it, and that's how we do it as trainers, and that way you should enjoy your exercise and you can build the intensity up. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed the video, and try and remember some of that stuff, and I'll see you soon.